Hi, this is a general overview of zpath render. So I just imported a bike model into SketchUp 8. Here's the Ruby console. It's open by default and it provides just the basic feedback from zpath on what it's doing. You'll only see it basically when you click render and start importing the scene geometry to the render. So now I'm going to render by clicking plugins zpath render. So it loads the geometry, textures and everything into the render, and there it is. So it's right now the scene is skylit. There are no lights put in by the user. It actually renders pretty fast, very comparable to GPU rendering, and it's all done on the CPU and software. So on the right, the controls dialog is basically everything you need to edit materials, camera settings, and everything like that. It's really straightforward and intuitive. And while editing the scene, you could keep on the progressive render, and it'll just render in parallel. So the first thing is the edit materials dialog, which is one of the more important ones. It lists all the materials in your scene. So you could select the material name based on what you put in, but it's easier just to use the pick tool. So the pick tool, basically you just click on what you want and it'll select the proper material. So here it defaults to a diffuse material from SketchUp. I'm going to override that and change it to use a reflective material. So I select the Uber shader, or Uber material type. Basically is full control over your reflectiveness and glossiness of your material. So clicking that, you have these really intuitive controls over how glossy, how reflective, specular highlights, stuff like that, normal map settings, specular map settings. It's really simple and straightforward. So right now I'm just going to make it fully reflective and slightly glossy. And all I have to do is click apply and it's applied. So the next thing I'm going to do is do something similar to the ground. So I'm just going to make that slightly glossy and reflective. So there it is. So now I'm just going to turn the gloss off. You get like mirror-like reflections, and turn it back on. So the next thing is the camera settings. So you have control over your depth of field, which is one important feature. So you could use the picker to select a focal point. So basically I selected the bike center, and you can increase the aperture size to increase the depth of field. So notice the character is out of focus. You could also change the field of view. Another thing is you can unlock the camera, and that basically gives you full control over the movement and angle and zoom of the camera. So you can reposition it to what you want, and when you unlock the camera or lock it back, it resumes rendering. So the tone mapping is a simple exposure setting that you could change without resetting the progressive render. For more complex tone mapping or HDR pipeline, you could export your scene to, or your render to OpenEXR and use some other more complex tools. So here the render settings basically are global wide settings for the application. You could change the resolution. So it's nice to keep a 512 by 512. Say for a laptop, it'd be really nice to do a preview and then put it back to a full HD render when you got everything set up. The number of bounces basically defaults to 2. It's a number of ray bounces. You could increase that for reasons I'll show you soon. So here, that the windshield of the bike, you could actually modify the alpha, or you can basically use a glass or refractive material. And in order to see the effects properly, you have to increase the ray bounces. So you could actually See, there we go. So it's less opaque, and basically it's a proper glass rendering of the windshield. So you have options to save your render as a PNG, open EXR as I said before, and you could also save a scene file. The scene file is basically it's a pre-compiled geometry from SketchUp. So basically you could save out your geometry so you don't have to use SketchUp to import it to the render again. So basically you just make zpath a standalone render if you don't want to change anything in SketchUp, and you could just import your scene quicker from the .scn extension. So the settings, you could save all your camera settings, your render settings like tone mapping, all your material settings, everything you see here, and you save it using this dialog, and you could save your scene settings and then you could load them next time. And the final control is pause. You could actually pause the progressive render. Say if you want to do something else on your computer, or the GUI is not responsive enough on a slower machine, you could pause the rendering and say like do material edits and stuff, and then basically resume rendering if you find the GUI not responsive enough on a lower end machine.